All right, we're gonna get started here. Looking at the potential for today. Got a MD out right now. We'll get that loaded as soon as we get started here. Hey, looking at visible satellite, you can see our clearing here in the Texas Panhandle. That's going to be the focal point for development of storms. You can already see a Q field starting to develop here in the western part of the Panhandle. That will be where we will initiate our storms today. They'll move off to the east and move into a much better environment, and then we'll be rocking and rolling. So you can see that clearing, and that clearing will allow for that eroding of that cap, a little bit more instability to form in this area. We have we'll look at the latest mesoscale. Here's a get that loaded here. So again, let's take a look. Hey, 20Z RAP shows our low pressure sitting right over the New Mexico, Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas border. And you can see when we look at our surface map here. One second, we'll flip over here and do that. Let me change screens real quick and we can do that. Q beans. All right, so when we look at current, look at GR level 3. It's what I like to use when I'm chasing. You can see those storms starting to initiate here on the western part of the panhandle, right what we talked about, right? That clearing in this area really going to allow moisture to come into the area. Now, looking at surface ops right now, you can see right now our dew points have started to climb in Amarillo. They were in the 40s just a little while ago. We're at 52. If we move over and look at in a little bit of western Oklahoma, man, dew points 54, dew points 52, dew points 52, dew points 52. And what we'll see is as we get a little bit further to the south, really we'll start to see some 60-degree dew points start to creep in here. Really upper 50s here, upper 50s. Then now we start seeing dew points in the 60s here. This moisture will flow. Look at that strong southerly flow ahead of this system is really going to bring that moisture into this area. And we will see dew points in the upper 50s reaching 60. But again, you can see that clearing here. And again, let me go back to looking at our surface ops, etc. Again, going to look at current satellite. Again, we'll loop this. You can see where these storms are starting to initiate right there on the west side of the Panhandle. They'll move into a much favorable area where we've seen a little bit more daytime heating. And again, we can look at what that looks like currently. So if we look at start looking at some of the potential, which we look at in Cape here, you can see we have some places where we're starting to get, 1,750 to 1,000 joules of Cape. So we're starting to see some enhancements here in our instability. As you can see, as we get a couple hours ahead, again, the RAP forecasting some pretty good improvements in the Cape. Now, what you also see is we're a little bit capped in the atmosphere. In the RAP doesn't show that cap really eroding away. Although the HRRR does. When we go to the HRRR, we're going to zoom in right into that area here. Again, if you got questions, ask them along the way too. When we go into the HRRR, you can see our surface-based cape as we get a little bit into this afternoon. This is right where our storms are beginning to fire right now on the Western Panhandle. As we get a couple more hours down the road, again, we're going to have a little more cape, a little more instability as we get that moisture to flow up from the south. But again, very, very narrow window of cape here across the area. And again, if you look at the cap, right now you see capped atmosphere across central and eastern parts. Now, the HRRR shows that eroding away as we get through the afternoon, but not completely. So you'll see these, there are storms that will fire closer to the 4, 5, 6 o'clock area, and will progress off to the east. Okay. Current look at the HRRR. Oops, yeah, this is the latest. Yep, 19Z HRRR. Again, if we look at dew points for that area, as we look at that forecast, again, we're seeing those 50s down here. We're going to see these 60s begin to creep up into that area and really give us a little more fuel for storms. Now, 60 is kind of right on the edge of where we would want our dew points to be. We really want our dew points to be in the 60s, close to 70. But when we have a sharp cold front dry line here, man, we're going to have enough lift for storms to move through the afternoon. But man, if this was a day with mid 60s, man, we'd really be talking about a tornado outbreak here with this type of setup. Why is this setup so significant today? It's so significant because of this. The low level shear. That shear at 0 to 1 kilometer is maximized right at the 0Z time period, with low level jet really kicking in and really bringing moisture and bringing that low level that low level helicity to these storms. So the idea is anything that can get up in the atmosphere today at the lowest levels will have a chance to rotate because of how strong this low level shear is. And you can see that as we play out the helicity a little bit later into the afternoon. Man, we talk about 200, 225 meters per second of helicity. Man, as we get into this later on this afternoon, watch this number jump. I mean, like screaming amounts of low level shear. Again, that's going to rotate anything at the lowest levels that can form in this area. Okay. So then as we look at, again, this is the latest runs of the HRRR. Okay. As we look at what reflectivities could look like, again, this is what we're seeing right now, right? We're seeing these storms begin to fire out here in the Panhandle, western part, and start to progress off to the east. They will encounter that area right now that is the cloud cover has moved away. We're starting to heat that atmosphere and building a little more instability. And then we'll see that moisture really transport here with that southerly flow. We'll start to see storms start to fire here across the Panhandle and really start to pick up as we get along the I-40 corridor as we begin to get into western Oklahoma. That's when that crazy amount of low-level jet will kick in, right? Those 850 winds, let's look at those 850 winds. That low-level jet really begins to maximize right at about sunset. Man, look at the low-level jet really crank here, 40, 50, 60 knots, really going to give the fuel for those storms. And then even maximized, my gosh, that low-level jet's going to be ripping as we get into the overnight hours. So that's what makes this such a potentially dangerous situation, is when we get into Oklahoma, when that low-level jet really starts to crank, that moisture's flowing into that line of storms. Okay, but again, looking at some of our composite indicators, here's our supercell composite. Again, starting to pick up where we could see some of the highest supercell potential. Again, it's going to be right as those storms move into western Oklahoma, crossing the border, and they tap into that low level jet, the best moisture in that southeasterly flow. Again, looking at any kind of tornado potential, same thing, same area, right? Right where we're maximized as we cross the border, right? So again, Storm Prediction Center now finally has a mesoscale discussion up, and that's for tornado watch probability 95%, fast moving supercells, significant gusts over 80 miles an hour, right? Let's go what else we're talking about in here. Dew point increases of 4 to 8 over the past 3 hours, right? This is what we talked about. That kind of, will that moisture make it up there? That's been the question mark, is whether or not that moisture could make it that far north. And then we talk about the 0 to 6 kilometer shear, but also the lowest level shear really be ripping, right? So supercells, how long will they stay supercellular? That will be the question of the day today. Convective line with embedded tornadoes will be what we'll see the most of. The question will be, how long can storms stay isolated? You can see here we got still some isolated storms in the Panhandle, and then we'll probably fill in with some isolated storms to the west of Amarillo as we get going here. So again, clear skies, moisture flowing. This area right here seems prime for our next group of storms. Let's see what the 18Z 3K NAM does. Again, there's that strong 850 low level jet, cranks in right at sunset. Let's see if the dew points have changed at all. See if the predictions here on what we're going to get for dew points. Will we get more into the mid 60s? Possibly, right? If we can get, some 64, 63, 65 degree dew points in this area, we're really going to have some fuel for storms. That's the question, right? Is how far will these dew points get? And how far will they get to the north? But again, with such a high low-level jet and low-level shear, anything that can go up can really get going. Interesting little pockets here. There's a little bit of look of what the 3K NAM plays out. It shows it going linear so quick, right? But in it, some real embedded monsters, right? There's tornado parameter there, tornado parameter here. As these storms move off in more of a linear mode across and fill in across Oklahoma. Now, again, all depends on how fast the transition will be. Now, we'll have tornadoes regardless, whether they're singular, whether they're embedded because of that low level shear. But the real fear would be isolated cells that would really maximize the use of that shear. And we really start to see some strong tornado potential. If we look at the tornado potential, it's very much like it was yesterday, where you have this very brief window of significant tornadoes, right? Kind of here as storms begin to develop. And then right as we see that transition to linear, there's a little bit of a window in here around 1Z, really to see that transition over really more of a significant tornado threat, more to a linear threat with embedded tornadoes. So you do have this window of opportunity, and then, we're really only going to see embedded after that part. So it's a little bit of that transition, and that's maximized about 1Z, right? So we're talking about 4 hours from now. So we're looking at that 6 or 7 o'clock window. And you can already start to see a storm rotating back here, again, with all of that low-level shear, which will even increase up here as it moves off to the east. Again, we're looking at storms rotating with only about 40 degrees of dew point in this area. This will get much better as we get here, crossing over into Oklahoma. Okay. All right, so then let's look one more time. Let's look at what the HRRR does with that tornado potential. Again, super narrow window, right? Which your chasers are going to try to maximize. And again, the HRRR says you got a little bit of a better window at about 6 o'clock. Before, again, that turns off very quickly, right? So right maximized at about 6 or 7 p.m., right along the border, right along I-40, right there, to try to get something maximized, okay? Here's also going to be a problem. I'm going to go back to the radar loop. I mean, the satellite. Man, we're blowing a ton of dust. Man, we're going to have a dusty chase for those guys out here today. So much wind, rocking forward. Let's look at, again, if we look at the HRRR, again, we go to wind gusts. Oops, that's relative humidity. We go to wind gusts. Man, behind that system and pushing ahead of it, man, look at those strong winds in the 60s, right? And then as we get into the afternoon and evening, man, real strong winds along with those storms. So really challenging chase. We have a lot of dust, a lot of visibility problems because of all the dust that's going to be out there. I don't know if this will pick it up. It usually looks at some cloud visibilities. Yeah, it's not doing a good job of picking it up, but you see we're going to have in around those storms a lot of wind and a lot of blowing dust. So it's a quick look. We'll go live here a little bit later this afternoon as storms progress. But you can see they're starting to move into an area where within the next 2 or 3 hours, we're going to see better development here as we start to see storms tap into some better dew points, right? We got 52, 55 right here in Pampa, 52. So we're getting some moisture transporting up. And so as we get more of these southeasterlies, man, now we're talking about getting some moisture, right? 63 here, 55 in Wichita Falls. So this moisture en route to these storms, you look at that like that I-40 corridor, you look at like the Elk City, Shamrock window, man, get on your pony and get moving east with these storms as they come in that area. So we'll keep you updated. We'll post a little bit later. But thanks for checking in and watching our live feed. We'll see you guys later.